Hi, I'm Valerie Englehart, and in this video I am going to be doing a profile portrait study. So in this one I am inspired by some manhwa I've read, which is a Korean webtoon or Korean comic. And therefore this character is drawn in like a comic book style. And I'm trying to translate that into my own personal style, which is loose but with realistic proportions. Now, this particular character is royalty and described as the Exalted Sun, like S-U-N. And so I dove into colors like quinacridone gold and Aussie red gold because I was like, I want this character to exude sunlight. And so I started with the face profile, shaping out the nose, the brow, the lips, the chin. And for the hair, because the hair is just going to be a shape and his hair is white, so I just dragged that pigment up and kind of made a hair shape. For the shadows, normally there's purple or blue, but I went in with a light green, just because I have seen other people use green in portraits and was curious if I could make it work myself. Now I'm using my size 8 brush, which I'm using for the majority of this piece, and I am lifting some highlights in a few places, like the lip, that like part of the nose where the eye is going to be. And then I'm just placing in more green where the shadows would be. And softening, because the hair, again, is white and, well, soft. I did have a little bit of the paint go away from the lip where I didn't like how that looked, so all I had to do was press and lift with my paper towel, and it was all good. You just want to make sure you do it before the paint dries. So now I'm going in with red, and that could have been difficult with that whole being next to the green because you don't want to get mud. So his outfit is going to be very bold in color. If you saw the thumbnail, which I'm sure you did, there are some very strong colors and shapes of his outfit, and so I didn't want like a pale, timid face and then strong clothes. So that's why I added in red to the cheek. I went bolder with the green in the shadow, and I will be adding more of like this bluish green teal to the eye area as I go. So now I'm just placing the shapes of bits of his turban. And so I'm starting with the darkest color. This is Cosmic Sound by Rockwell Art. Some comparable colors would be like indigo or Payne's gray. If you want to get granulating, lunar blue probably would have looked really great here. And because I want this to be a loose portrait that, again, I stress, bathed in sunlight, so I don't want, even though the outfit is strong, I want gaps. I want places where it's not completely painted properly. Lost, found, almost like you only caught a glimpse of him as he went by. So I'm using permanent red, and I'm just sticking to whatever I have in this palette. I did not squeeze out any new colors, and I am just doing all of this wet into wet. My first layer took the longest, and yet this is a very important part in that it's like the skeleton of the piece. It can be discouraging to work on a watercolor like this, and if it's not looking perfect or the way you imagined, it's really easy to get discouraged. But it's important that this really is only the first wash. There will be more built upon it, so don't get discouraged. Keep going. I did drop some quinacridone gold up into his turban because, again, sunlight. I want sunlight. Now I'm working on his outfit, so I don't want any bit of him to touch the edges of the painting. I want this to sort of fade away, and I do want it loose. So I'm using bold, confident strokes. Just here's going to be a block of color, stroke, block of color, stroke, block of color, some dry brushing for texture, and then more gold. Now he does have, in the reference image that I'm using, this butterfly brooch, and I do like how ornamented he is, so I am lifting some of that paint to create that shape and then letting the excess water drip down because I don't mind if things get disturbed. and have cauliflowers and texture. I want this to be dreamy. Give me those textures. I also want to make sure I connect my shapes. So that drape of cloth, bleed it down, connect it to that shoulder, let them fuse and merge together lightly. Now that panel of his shoulder is going to be like gold and dark, so I did a lot of that gold paint. Now I'm just dropping in some of that cosmic sound. And I'm at the point of this wash where it's basically done, and now I'm going in and lifting areas that I want to remove some pigment, but very softly. When you lift pigment at this stage, it's going to be soft, and that's what I want. If I did this too early, the paint would have just seeped back into the area and it wouldn't have technically lifted. So you have to get it into that like damp wetness stage, and make sure you use a dry to damp brush when you do it, like not bone dry, like a wet brush that's been dried off. All right, now I'm using staccato brush marks, short, choppy. I'm keeping it jagged because he's wearing this like fur stole, and I want to allude to it, but I don't want it to be very strong. Pay attention to your values. What makes a painting interesting is a range of values. And so I have a habit, because I love colors and I love going in with really rich pigment, so I have a tendency to make things really dark and not utilizing watercolor for the luminosity it brings. So for this stole, it is kind of like this beige color, and so I'm just using colors that are in the surrounding area, that bluish green color, which is called Poseidon, and then dropping in a little bit of like Aussie red gold to give it some warmth, because I want it to reflect the colors that are surrounding it. That is what you do when you have like a very light or white subject, is reflect the colors that are nearby. And also think in terms of detail, because this is going to be a loose painting. Not everywhere needs to be detailed. That stole is on the other side of his shoulder. It's soft, it's further away. So I just needed to allude that it existed, and that's it. And then just a little more lifting the eyebrow, lifting a shine on the lip. Let it dry. So now that it's dried, it's time to put in things like details and shape things up. So I got so excited with this piece that there were times I forgot to hit the record button. One of the times that I did is I did put a line to separate that drape of cloth on his face from the rest of his face. But I do want to point out, notice how in the first wash, that color seeped into his face. And the way it did was great. It created a shadow and it created a reflection of the color. And then by adding a hard line to separate the two, I have shown this is his face, this is a piece of cloth. And then I used some of that Poseidon color to create a piece of jewelry. He is wearing an earring. There's going to be a lot of gold in this. And so I've squeezed out Daniel Smith Iridescent Aztec Gold. It is my favorite golden watercolor paint. And just a little cheapsy brush that I bought eons ago. And I squeezed out some fresh pigment just on a scrap piece of paper, and I am going in painting this kind of filigree pattern, and then every so often messing it up because I do want it to be loose and atmospheric. Notice I just plopped in some paint and it started to bloom. That is excellent. And the reason being is if I have places that are loose and then suddenly the pattern on the fabric is super detailed, that's a visual disconnect. That doesn't make sense. I can't see the whole of a hat, but I can see the fine stitching detail. No. But it is good to have it there. It does give more personality. It gives a little more information, but definitely mess some of it up in the shadow and soften it in certain areas. It doesn't need to be so neat. And so the majority of this time is going to be me just painting filigree and details. So I'm going to take a moment to talk about this character and my personal little kind of oopsie-daisy. So this character's name, as I stated, is Shuraka, and I think that even though my idea with him being described as the sun, He has like command over plants. He can make flowers bloom. So cool. And in this scene, he is next to a couple of people in a northern country who are like pasty vampire white, like ivory color. And so as I was looking and comparing, everything made sense with my color choices. But when I was done and I turned off my tablet and I cut the paper from the block, I went, did I just whitewash Shuraka? So Shuraka is a person of color, and this is a study. This is my first time painting him, and honestly, I'm pretty impressed with how it came out, getting a human look from a comic book character. So that was a moment of learning for me where I got to sit back and go, huh. But when I hit the end of a painting, especially at this point, I don't want to introduce any more colors. And if I had gone and deepened things with any of my other colors, I would have either made him look like a clown or like fluorescent or overworked. With human skin, you don't want to work it too much. And it can get muddy very quickly, and I don't want that. So yeah, basically what it comes to is, oh no, I guess I'm gonna have to paint him again and try using different colors this time. So I'm actually pretty excited. And speaking of excited, I did that thing again where I forgot to hit record while I was changing out my water. I didn't want to keep painting with all of that gold paint in my water. So I got back and I got really excited about painting his eye in. And I like detailed the lip a little more and worked on the nose. So all I'm doing at this moment is using some white ink to paint some beads that are coming off of the turban and draping along his face. I'm just doing that with a small cheapsy brush, and I'm wiggling it, doing a straight line, kind of wiggling it to create that bead texture. And I have to go over it a couple times just because when you put the white down, it does fade a bit, and so you just let it dry and then paint it again. I did speed this all up to 200%, that way, I mean, I really did take my time with this one. So we're not here all day, I did speed it up. Now I've gone back to my goal to put the gold beads in. So I'm just putting in circular shapes, putting in beads. Let's go back to talking about the face. For the nostril, usually, especially when we see something maybe in a picture, that is a dark value. Do not use black. Do not use purple. Do not make it too pronounced, or it will look weird. But you do need to have it there, or, you know, like, how the heck is he going to breathe through his nose? So use a color like a red or a brown, something warm. Usually there's blood in the face, so I just used the red that I had. And at first it will look a bit like, oh, what did I do? Watercolor dries paler, so it's all good. Now I did pull out my Daniel Smith iridescent gold watercolor ground, which I like to use if I want texture. He does have this large bit, like a pendant or something. And so I usually have a lot of luck using this for creating that impactful texture. But as I was painting it, I didn't like it. So I just grabbed my paper towel, I tried scraping off as much as I could, and then went back in with my gold paint and using just an inexpensive angled flat brush. Now, because the rest of this painting is loose, I know that something metal being very hard, I like that contrast of weight and shape, but you still don't want it to be too neat and too heavy. So I'm just paying attention, getting the gist of the shape correct, and trying not to pay too much of attention to it because it is not the focal point. But it's important to have it there. So now that I've called that out, let's move back to his face, his eye. Notice that I didn't use white to create the white of his eye. And notice the size. Eyes are very important to people. We put a lot of importance in the eye. And also, he's a comic book character, and their eyes are usually drawn at a really nice large size. And so I was challenged with placing the eye in a place that was believable and making it the right size without a reference image. I could have found a reference image for a person, but I wanted to use my imagination to see if I could, and I think I did a pretty good job of it. But notice I didn't use any black there, and nor a super dark value. Because this is a loose painting, I'm painting it as if you've only gotten a glimpse of him, and maybe this is your memory of him. You're not going to see all of those details, you're just going to get an overall impression. And so put in enough of your painting to make it believable, but don't go overboard with the details. Put in the eye, but he doesn't need the pupil, he doesn't need the eyelashes. Although in the comic he has gorgeous eyelashes. So right now, to bring the beads and separate it from the face, I am painting in some shadow. And I'm just using that blue-green color in a very fine brush. And only painting on one side of the beads, like a cast shadow. So really quickly, if you are interested in reading this manhwa, it is called Blossoms of the White Night by Brothers Without a Tomorrow. It just finished season 1, and I am in love with it. It is so good. I will say though, it is not safe for work. So if you are someone who, for example, in terms of violence and relationships, didn't like something like Game of Thrones, you probably wouldn't like this. It's very political and it's a bit bloody. I love the world building and the culture of it all and the religions that they have. So if you're okay with some blood and spice, I recommend checking it out. I love it so much. And then just adding in a couple little darks just to really bring it together. Remember, watercolor dries paler. Go a little darker. And here's the finished painting. So if you liked this video, press that like button so I know to make more like this. And if there's anything you want to see me paint, let me know in the comments. I'm really interested to know what you all would like to see. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!